House of Cards team, and we're going to start off by talking a little bit about our semester so far. It's been a really interesting one. It's kind of a discovery semester. So we came into the semester with this idea of a game about unrest, but it started off in a very kind of inaccessible fashion, and we weren't quite sure what to do with it right away. So we've been chasing this emotion, this idea of unrest, and what we ultimately want to do is we don't want to convey unrest just like every other game does with which is a core challenge. But we wanted to convey it in a way that's very, that's parallel to the American dream and parallel to the struggles of American society. So that required a lot of experimentation along the way. Our first attempt at this was this kind of weird 3D prototype that we pitched last year. And we talked about earlier this year already about like the struggles that we had with that. So then at midterm, we showed you guys an open world kind of approach where you would build tons and tons of different houses, and you'd move your character around the entire scene and kind of create this entire ecosystem. And we found, with that midterm, we found our core mechanic. We found the way to draw, to build structures. And we really, really liked that. But what we didn't like so much was managing this gigantic ecosystem because it didn't fit in with our core mechanic. Like, you're building structures, but they didn't really do anything except for just sit there in a very kind of still world. So today we're going to show you our kind of latest and final version of it. We've been working all semester on really finding this core gameplay loop that we really like, that we can stop changing and just iterate on and iterate on and iterate on. And what we decided to do is we decided to focus on the idea of ascension, of getting higher and higher and trying to pursue your dream by actually moving up in the world. And we thought that fit in well with the building mechanic of the game because you're building tall structures. So in this case, you can use those structures to climb and help or potentially hurt people along the way in your pursuit of the American dream. So we're going to show you what that looks like today. So we switched everything to this table view. We decided to push the metaphor of House of Cards even more. You build houses of cards on tables, so we wanted to kind of use as many real-world aesthetics as possible. And I'll have Suzanne tell you a little bit more about the aesthetics as Brandon kind of introduces the game.
Yeah, okay, so I guess as you can see from the midterm, everything's changed a whole lot. And I think one of the things that art has tried to do over the period of time between the midterm and now is soften everything to make things less bleak but still kind of sad and melancholy. We've added tables. Initially we just had platforms, so I guess what better thing to put houses of cards on than a table. We've been working on creating just a gradient of color and a script of color to match the emotions of each piece of the game, which you won't be able to see in this version or even at demo day, but we're still constantly evolving within the art process, and we are still putting things in. This isn't all of the final stuff. We'll have more things on demo day too, so you guys should come check us out.
Thanks, Suzanne. So these initial few segments are designed to teach you a little bit about the core interactions of the game. This first one is all about player movement and what it's like to actually go into a house for the first time. So as Brandon moves into a house, he's going to be able to climb up to the next segment, which is it's a very different type of movement than we had before. Now, in this next segment, he is going to be able to meet a few people for the first time. And every NPC in this game has their own wants and desires, and they'll have kind of a unique perspective to bring to the world. One of them, I welcome Brandon to the game world, and another one, I will kind of give him a hint on how to progress. So this is the first time that the player is going to build a house for themselves. And as Brandon enters build mode, the camera zooms out, and they're able to do this really cool drawing mechanic to go on to the next structure. And Andreas will tell you a little bit about the next one.
On this next table, we get to see a big part of House of Cards, which is giving the structures you build purpose. Now, to reach this table, Brandon had to use an undefined, a building without a purpose. And so the problem with using these kind of buildings is that the first time you use them, they collapse and the cards are wasted. So you have to find other ways of doing it. So there are three main types of buildings in House of Cards. You have houses, schools, and businesses. And on this area, we're going to show houses. Now, the NPC in this segment, needs a home. It has nowhere to stay for the night. And if Brandon so chooses, he could build the NPC a house. So in order to do this, he needs to find a purpose card. These card-like creatures that wander the game world. And they're used to give these structures purpose. So Brandon needs to wander around and find this card. So in order to bring that card to the next segment, the player has to beckon that card to follow the main character. And, excuse me. And so when that happens, the card will follow the main character anywhere it goes. But if we go back to the last segment, you're going to notice a new addition to the game, orbs. The orbs are scattered around the game world, and the player can pick them up and increase the size of the card deck. And what this does is increases the amount of cards that the player can use to build. And this is a big part of the game because there's a limited number of cards in the game, and so the player is constantly looking for new cards. Now, right now, Brandon is going to define the building and give the NPC a home and try to ascend to the next level. Well, as you can see, he needed to build a second layer on the house to go to the next level, and that's one of the big parts of House of Cards. They're going to be the tables are going to be at different heights, and so you need to add various levels on the buildings. Now, on this table, we see another big part of the House of Cards. Here, we got the player can choose to either destroy the NPC's building and use his cards to ascend, or find another way around it. So the red door on the building means that the NPC owns that house. If Brandon tears it down, he tears away the NPC's house, and the NPC's not going to be too happy. Just like in real life. You tear somebody's home down, they're not going to be too happy. So what happens in House of Cards when you take away an NPC's building? They have this potential to write. And what writing does is the NPC gets angry, there's a visual cue, and he starts destroying all the structures on the segment and knocks the player off. Now, luckily, the NPC on this segment didn't have that temperament. He didn't react that way, so we don't have to deal with that problem. And so Brandon now is going to try to find another way to ascend to the next table. And here's Michael going to tell you more about it.
Hi. Now, as I've said before, there's three types of purpose cards. There's homes, schools, and business cards. Now, each card kind of has its own special way that it helps the player, and right now we're going to show you how education or school cards can help the player. So, Brandon is going to build a school card, or build a school building, and just like in real life, when you get an education, it boosts you up in life. It gets you farther a lot faster. So practically, the school building, when you go inside of it, instead of just going to the roof, it literally launches you like a trampoline, so you don't have to build as many levels. Something special about the business cards is that they actually have two specialties. The other types of purpose cards and undefined structures can only build 2 levels, whereas business cards can build up to 4 levels. And actually, going back to the table design, it's really unique in that tables are good and help the player because they show you how tall the table is, and it helps you kind of estimate how many levels you really need to progress. So as you can see, you can build multiple levels, and also in addition to being able to build a lot of levels onto business cards, they also give you a purpose card in return when you make a business building. So Brandon will now climb up to the last level, and the player will ascend into the clouds, which is the next kind of tier of society, so to speak, and the top tier of society.
And yeah, basically at Demo Day we're going to be showing a more polished version of this, and we're going to be working all week on it. And yeah, that's our presentation. Thanks, guys. Yeah, so, sure. So next semester, there's one core gameplay element that we'd like to add in, and we talked about this with you a little bit earlier, but that's the idea of the kind of environmental dynamics to the game. So we have like this core gameplay loop, and we'll tweak it with different types of environmental effects. And then beyond that, we're going to completely redo all the art next semester to make the game much more beautiful and much more accessible. And of course, finish it.
Like the environmental things, we call it social climate.
Mhm.
Any questions? Anybody else? Yeah, questions?
Very interesting. You've had a very interesting process stuff, isn't that? So I'm curious to see how all these things, how they come about, and iteration, coming up with.
It's mostly, we come up with an idea, try it out in a game, and if it just doesn't kind of convey what we're going for, we throw it out and we try again. And there's not much more science or magic into it than that. We just keep going.
Yeah, I mean, we really try to like reel ourselves back and not get lost in just making mechanics for the sake of mechanics, and we want to make we want to stay with the metaphor and make everything based off of, at least in part, our main goal to ascend and you know, to mimic the social climate of America and, you know, the American dream.
And just to, you know, give a little more to that answer, we have a great team. Like when you saw the different iterations, we built that, rejected it, built another one, rejected it. So a lot of things got thrown out. A lot of things we kept redesigning. Our team stayed with us the entire time. And, you know, hats off to them. They went through the long nights, the last minute changes, and it was brute force, really, just hard work and dedication.
It seems like you've gone a lot more from an open world to a much more controlled, smaller environment. What kind of inspired that change?
There were a few things. When we had a very open world structure, we realized that our systems weren't complex enough to really make the world feel alive. And one of the reasons was that we fell in love with this kind of core mechanic of building. And when we build, we had these 3 different types of structures and stuff, but there were only so many variables that we could play with that were meaningful to the player. It was basically size, volume, that was essentially it. So we decided that those kind of variables would be more meaningful in a more controlled environment. We could do a lot more with them and have a lot more variation rather than one that, you know, was just all systems based.
Go ahead.
I guess this is like more of a tutorial level because I didn't see much like challenge to like do it in different ways. So I guess my question is, are there gonna be like really big tables where you have to do like a whole bunch of different building before you can finally get one tall enough to go?
Yeah.
What I saw it didn't really seem like a game yet.
No, we totally hear you. Well, one of the things that we didn't show in this build was the riding system, which will be in there for Demo Day, and that definitely addresses a lot of your concerns. But a lot of the kind of like more open world, not open world, but more less linear approaches come from having clusters of tables, and that one of our goals for next semester is to design a lot of those out and come up with interesting ways of doing that.
And this is the tutorial.
It is a tutorial, right? Yeah.
One thing that I wonder if you can have in there is, you explain well the social climate we talked about, the social arsenal in there, but it doesn't really come through the game itself, and yet I feel it's going to be in there. Do you have any plans for Demo Day how do you explain that? Can it be verbal or?
I guess part of it will be verbal, and then we're going to polish the art up for Demo Day 2 to do our very best to make that come through as well as possible.
You might want to think about even just a couple static shots initially, maybe grab some art of people riding and other things like that, and just, you know, just do a couple like, you know, set up the world, you know, and this is the house of cards that he's playing.
Right.
Maybe some bang for the buck.
Okay, that's Great idea.
The documentary, like some like real world photos.
Mhm.
Also, like, for the need for an artist, I can put it next to the lower levels traditional, right?
Mhm.
The lower tables, and if you can go down, that kind of, I think.
Right, right.
So why should I make these buildings permanent? Why can't I not just?
One more team want to come up?
Sure.
Said that.
Yeah, thanks a lot for the feedback,
Any
guys.
other questions? Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah, back there, and let's get done.
So-
More team, kind of.
The theme is kind of like the American dream, and when you're building to like ascend in the social ladder,
Mhm.
is there a meaning to House of Cards? Because I mean, like, I guess what I'm trying to say is the House of Cards itself is kind of a fragile phrase. Are you also trying to say that the American dream is very fragile and not attainable?
Absolutely. We have a lot more about that, and it would take a long time to explain all of our ideas about that, but I look forward to next semester where we can show you some more.